Hi, friends. Welcome back to Honoring the Journey. I'm Leslie Niche, your host. We are going on yet another adventure together today and just honoring the journey of Mary Terhune. And she's amazing. Let me just tell you something. I found her through my friend Keith Giles at Choir Publishing. We're both choir authors. And I've been doing, of course, a little research on Mary, and her story is so fascinating. So I don't know if you have a seatbelt, but you might want to buckle it up. No, I'm just kidding. But Mary just wrote a book and it's called Out of the Blue. And the subtitle is True Life Experiences of Awakening, Revelation, Transformation, and Consciousness Based Medicine. And so, welcome to Honoring the Journey, Mary. I cannot wait to dive into your story.
Thank you, Leslie. I'm happy to be here.
Well, thank you so much. And I do like to kind of start my podcast off. Maybe you've listened to a few and understand this. I love to just kind of ask a random question just to get to know you as a person before we get to
Sure,
know you as a author and hear your
sure.
story. So I was wondering, Mary, if you can recall a favorite childhood memory.
A favorite childhood memory. I think being in nature
Oh, really? Well,
was
that
my
doesn't surprise me.
favorite childhood memory, and catching salamanders and then
Oh,
bringing them home and putting them in the tub, only to have my mother scream
oh, I'm
tell
sure. Yeah. Oh, that's
to
so
tell me not
funny.
to put any more salamanders in the tub. So I think that's one of my favorite
I
memories.
do the being a child, I think, years ago, both of
Yeah,
us, it's just so interesting to me. We were outside all the time. You know what I mean? Like we
all the
just
time.
very rarely came inside. And now it's like you look around,
Yeah,
you're like, where are the kids at? And it's just so
yeah,
sad. They're missing out on so much, don't you think?
yes.
Yeah.
Especially the experience of being in nature a lot.
Yes. Yeah. That's so important.
Yeah.
What do you think that did for you?
Just that connection with nature, I just had it all my life, and of course, when I had the spontaneous spiritual awakening to discover or experience that consciousness was the basis of all life,
Mm.
and that nature is consciousness in action, created in,
Yeah.
by consciousness, and it's a living force, and which brought me to homeopathy and the living remedies of homeopathy, which can never expire.
Mm.
And it's the medicine of the people because it's curative in its action and it works with the consciousness of your body. And basically illness is starts as stuck consciousness or stuck mind emotions. That's how it all
Really?
begins. Yeah, that's how it all
Wow. That's
begins.
interesting.
Yeah.
I want to hear more about that. First, let's talk though a little bit about your upbringing. Did you grow up in church, or were you a spiritual
i i
kid?
I wasn't, well, spiritual, I wouldn't have called it that as a child, although being in nature was very spiritual. I grew up, raised as a Catholic, but from a very young age, I dismissed it because I remember being 7 years old, and my best friend across the street was Patty Vogel, and she was a Protestant. And I was told as a Catholic that Protestants were gonna go to hell, and I shouldn't be friends with my friend, which I thought was insanity.
Yeah,
As a
yeah,
seven-year-old, I thought this just doesn't work for me. And so, that sort of began the whole underlying feeling that this this isn't true. And then, just growing up through the church, and I remember once being in church, and the priest would talk about the soul, and I'm like, the sole of your feet? I mean, what does this have to do with anything? So it sort of leaves these little funny memories. But I
yeah.
just left the dogma of the church because of the way they spoke about women
Mm.
and women's roles, and it just never made sense to me. It wasn't my experience.
Yeah, yeah,
But I never left the feeling of being spiritual, however I felt that, whatever I called it then. I didn't have a word for it then. And
yeah.
I had the feeling that Jesus really wasn't part of any religion,
Hmm.
um, but that he was a teacher, uh, but separate from religion. And this was my feeling.
Yeah.
So when I had my spiritual awakening, my spontaneous spiritual awakening in 1984 during a life crisis. I had it with the Master Jesus, came in the form of light through my window and began speaking seven revelations. And
Wow.
basically, it was this profound experience of light speaking to me. And one of the revelations had to do with disease. And
Hmm.
that disease began in consciousness. Of course, he didn't call it consciousness at the time. He just gave me the experience of disease as a stuck energy.
Hmm.
So he didn't use the word consciousness then, but that was my experience of it.
So
And I
what made
went,
you think it was Jesus? What made you know that it was Jesus?
you just know. I don't know how to. It's the soul knows. You know,
Yeah,
it's
recognized.
that feeling, and you just know it. And of course, he said things like, "Now, do you understand how they misuse my words in the Bible? I never meant for that to
Mm.
happen."
Mm.
And he felt very sad about that, using it against people. So
Really? Like
yes,
which parts of the Bible were upsetting?
he didn't say. He just said, "Now do you see how they misuse my words in the Bible?" That was all he said about it. And he said, "I don't like it when they use them against people." So
Mm.
however one takes that or experiences it, that's up to the person. But
So you
I've
said you
always
were in a life crisis. What was going on and why did he come through the window? What happened that day?
I was at that time I was working at a hospital, a big Boston hospital, and I was working in research administration, uh, giving administrative support to the Committee on Clinical Investigations. And I was also in my third year of massage school. And I had recently lost all my money through a bad real estate deal with friends. So I lost all my retirement funds. I had an 11-year-old child to raise. I had already been divorced. And I was just at a point of crisis where I was ridden by anxieties, wondering how I was going to support myself. I was thrown into debt, didn't know how I was going to pay it. And it was that moment where I just went into such a despair that I started sobbing so deeply and so profoundly. And that I didn't care if I lived or died because it was so awful. And I remember calling out saying, please, please God, just let me die. I can't deal with this. Now, I didn't know there was a God to say that to or anything, or a divine force, but those were my words. And in that moment, as my mind, the discursive mind was berating myself, my mind just stopped and it couldn't think one more bad thought. And in that moment, that space in between the words, this light entered my windows, this golden light, and the force of it was so strong and it was filled with so much love that I had to lay down on the couch.
Mm.
It was then that this force awakened the Kundalini energy in my body, that spiritual energy that's resting at the bottom of your spine, waiting to be ignited in this lifetime to restore your connection or your identification as divine, being divine in nature. And it ignited all the chakras in my body, which I had heard about, but I didn't know were true.
Had you heard about this energy before, or was this something revealed
I
to you
had
in that moment?
I heard about and I was in my third year of massage school, and somebody started talking about Reiki and
Mhm.
the light energy in your body, and I'm like, I wonder what that is, and chakras, and wonder what that is anyway, and that they
Mm.
were wheels and that they spun. But I didn't. That's basically what I knew. But and in
So
this moment when, yeah,
oh, I'm so sorry. Just a quick question. So you had been brought up in the church. So did
yes,
any of this kind of go against what you'd been taught? And how did you handle that in that moment?
no, I didn't. Nothing was taught about that in the church. I
Mm.
mean, I had left it a long time ago. But no, I recognized it as the truth.
Yeah.
I connected it as absolute truth because I was experiencing it in myself. So all my chakras started to spin, and this energy was filled with so much love,
Mm.
so much peace, so much divinity. I felt so loved. I felt like I was loved. And I felt, my gosh, this is truth. Why didn't anybody tell me about this? Why
I don't
doesn't
think very
anyone
many
speak?
people have had this experience, Mary. I don't think this is I mean, I think more people are. I just spoke with Annalise,
Yes,
not too long
yes,
ago about her spiritual awakening, and I've
yes.
had a spiritual awakening, and I think I mean, personally, and I'm speaking to people who may be listening who might still be in the church and who are like, "Ooh, this sounds very new age. I don't know about this," "Ooh, danger, danger." And I get it. I understand why you feel that way.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
is very out of the ordinary. But this is her experience. And that's the thing that I'm realizing. My experience was very different than yours. I didn't actually, hear or see, anything.
mm,
It was all internal experience. But
yeah.
I will say the outcome was the same. I
Yes,
realized it's all
exactly.
about love. I realized
Yes,
that it's all
it's
love,
all
love,
love.
love, and I've just been leaning into that since this happened for me. So I guess I wanted to just clear that up because I know some
Yep.
people are like, "Okay, this is nuts." And they don't even want to listen anymore. It's like, "No, no, no. Let's honor her journey and listen," because I do think that we are all having these experiences right now, many of us,
Yes.
and it's
And,
so
you know,
important
and
that we hear what people
yes,
have
and
gone through.
everyone's experience is different.
Yeah.
Everyone's understanding is different, but it doesn't matter because it is just love.
The same message.
It's the essence that we are. It's a divine nature that is lives in us. And once you experience it,
Mm.
that you can't go back. I mean, you
It's
know
true.
it, you recognize it, you feel it to be familiar to you. And not only that, but it feels like home.
That's a great way to put it.
It's, and it's beyond, it was what was there before religion. Before
Yeah.
religion, you were this unbelievable light of love and divinity that now is housed in this physical body to give you experiences in this world on earth,
Mm.
through your senses. And then once you basically, I lived my life outside of myself. I lived it in the world. And now I was having an experience of my inner state, my true self beyond an identity as a woman or a job. I was
Mm.
experiencing myself as this divine light that lives
How
in me as me.
how have you changed since this happened to you?
Well, I experienced that consciousness was the basis of all life, that it was divine in nature, that we're divine in nature and in essence, that it's beyond space and time. I had an experience of my own death, and you can't die. You just always are eternal light beings of love and divine nature. And that's was the message of all the great sages who've come to this earth or who haven't come to this earth, but still somehow give people experiences and knowledge in themselves by having an inner experience. It's all about the inner journey, not the
Yeah,
outer journey.
I know, isn't that
And
crazy? And that seems so simple, but it's so hard, especially when you've been taught a certain way your whole life. Like it has to go this way. And if it doesn't, it's from Satan.
yeah,
You know what I
well,
mean? Like that's a
it,
hard
you
thing to
know,
unlearn.
well, the ego, it has a lot of fear
Hmm.
and a lot of criticism. And that's all the ego is a misidentification that you think you're just a separate person and you have a separate life, but you really are life itself. You are life itself. You don't have a life. You are life itself. And when those chakras got ignited, and I just, the divine, there was a lot I didn't understand then, but I recognized it as like, this is the truth somehow. And I went to the backyard after he left, giving me 7 revelations, just to get some fresh air. When I opened the door, I saw these divine packets of light surrounding the trees and everything. And I experienced that light as pulsating with the deepest love. And I thought, oh my God, this is paradise, but we have made it into something else.
Yeah.
And I felt so much love, and I understood that the light is what created the entire material world and is creating the entire material world through us as we create. As everybody knows, you have this feeling you want to create something, whether it's
Hmm.
art, whether it's, your work and your work. And this creative force is comes from the essence of who we truly are. And
That's so
as we
true.
awaken it and we reclaim ourselves as
Mhm.
a divine sovereign being in this oneness of divinity, you know, after that experience with Jesus, I had so much love pouring in me and around me, and all I saw was love because he removed this veil from my third eye. I just wanted to sit on a bench and watch the world go by because I was swimming in this love. I loved everything and everybody. And I was working at a hospital, you know. I had to go back to work. I didn't want to though, but I when I went back to work, I was working with numbers and I couldn't work with numbers anymore. All I could do is sit in this divine bliss, this
So what did that
experience of
look like if you couldn't work? How did you keep your job?
well, I didn't.
Oh.
In the end, they, very nicely reorganized the office and let me go with a little severance pay.
Mm.
But, and by that time I had just graduated massage school, and I had some very interesting experiences with people as they experienced me
Well
emanating this light.
well, I was gonna say, okay, I'm gonna go back to the question, like, how did you change? Because,
Ah,
like, Mary the day before this happened, and then
yes,
Mary the day after, how did you change as a human being?
I um, knew that everything had this divine source in them somehow. And I asked the universe, sort of Googled the universe back then.
Mhm.
I asked the universe to please send me someone, a living master, to help me really integrate and understand this and talk to me because nobody else seemed to understand this. This was the mid 80s.
Mm.
No one was talking about consciousness. No one was talking out loud,
Yeah, this was
without,
ahead of time.
the people didn't talk about it because they were afraid they'd give them drugs or put them in a mental hospital or something. But
True.
I knew it was the absolute truth. So I said a prayer, and 2 years later, through serendipity, I happened to meet a realized being, a monk, and, that meeting,
What's a realized being? What does that mean?
someone who knows who is living in that state of divine consciousness all the time.
Okay.
Jesus was one of those masters. There were many sent to this earth, but he was the most well-known, throughout the world, and, of course, he was beyond religion, beyond country, beyond all but so are we, you see. That's what he tried to tell us.
Yeah,
He
you can
said the
do even
kingdom of
greater things. Yeah.
yes, the kingdom of divinity is within you.
Yeah, yeah.
And when I met this monk, I had another Kundalini awakening. It was so powerful that the energy went all the way up to this top chakra and opened this tremendous light of 1,000 suns. And I became the universe, like I was the universe. And I heard the words, Aham Brahmashmi. This is, you are Brahman, and all this is your creation in this world. And
Mm,
the whole world was this source, came from this source of love. And you can call it Christ consciousness. I don't care what you call it. It is this one beautiful, divine creation of love, and it lives in everyone and everything. So the way I treated myself and the way I treated others, instead of being critical of others, I saw them as no different. You know,
mm,
everyone is trying to find something, seeking something in themselves. We've been taught to seek it outside and then been disappointed by it. But now I had the experience of, you know, seek it inside. Everything is inside. And then you can experience the world in that way and live to serve people through your work
mm,
and know that this lives inside every person. So be respectful of different people's ideas, how they feel, their time on this earth, how they worship. It's all the same. It doesn't matter. There's divine nature. It lives in them. And they want the same things in their life. They want to be fulfilled. And during that time when I had that phenomenal experience of living in that state, which I could only hold for about 30 minutes because it was so powerful. In that moment that I had this experience, who appears? I was outside sitting under a pine tree at the time. Who appears up on top of a building, above a building, but Jesus in a cloud? and he has his hands like this, and he rises up in the cloud as he's looking at me, and I thought, "Oh, am I arising too? Is this the ascension?" And I thought, "Yes, it's an internal experience."
So he wasn't talking about, people being zapped up to heaven in a rapture. He was talking about an internal experience. Is that
The internal rapture.
wow?
Yeah,
That is so interesting. Well, and it is funny when you talked about the light, that kind of reminded me of the experience where Jesus was baptized and where, a voice came and said, "This is my beloved son in whom I'm well pleased." Like that experience was part of, maybe his way. I don't know. What do you think of that?
well, I don't pretend to speak for anyone else, but
Yeah.
it feels like that happened
Yeah.
because,
Because it happened to you. Yeah.
well, it happened to me, and, I understood his words very differently after this.
Mm.
He was one of the I mean, he's a rare enlightened being because he lived in that state then for good, which is our destiny.
Mm.
I heard the words, "Here is your divinity, the divinity that awaits all mankind." And if it awaits us, it's in us. However we or whenever we experience that. And it might happen in this lifetime
Maybe the
or
next.
another. Hmm.
Well, and I was gonna say, I bet many people, I think because of, what they're taught, their culture, the things that,
Mhm.
they're not even open to this. And I know being
I
somebody who
think so.
was, deep in evangelicalism, I had all the answers. I knew it all. And if
Yeah.
it wasn't in the Bible, it wasn't true. And so if somebody were to talk to me about what your
Mhm.
experience, I would have been like, that was a demon. That was
Mhm.
satanic. It's the new age movement. I was always afraid of the new age movement. Um, and all of it, like now I'm like, it's not my experience, but it's yours. I
Yeah.
want to hear what you've learned. And it sounds like even though your experience was so different, the things that we've learned are very similar.
Mhm.
And I would just put it different the way I
That's
experienced
right.
it. And so why do you
That's
think
right.
that is? Are we just like kind of designed for a specific path, maybe?
Well, we come into this world to experience things differently, whatever
Mm,
our path is. I mean, there's a million, as many as there are people, there are experiences and paths. Everybody has their own unique experience
yeah,
that their soul needs in this lifetime. And it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, the destination is the same destination. It's that of this love, this ever present, amazing, powerful, transcendent love that we all experience in different ways. And whether it's through a religion or not a religion or through nature, it doesn't matter. We're all
mm,
sort of, arriving at the same pool of love. And however you experience that is your experience on this earth. It doesn't, there's no one to criticize or, you know, my way or the highway. It's not like that. It's just love. And however you get there, you get there. And
how have we
it
strayed so
changed.
far from this idea? I mean, this is
Yes.
not the way the world is. You know that, right? I mean,
Well,
it
it's
should
not,
be.
it is the way the world is. It's just that the people, it's the
Yeah.
people in the world.
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah.
the world is beautiful and it's,
Yeah.
there's love that surrounds everything. And certainly when you're in nature, you feel that. You
Yeah.
feel the love coming from trees. You feel this aliveness, this healing. And, it's just that we forgot. We forgot who we are. We got sort of stuck in this notion of fear-based living and thinking. But that's what changed for me is that I experienced when I had the profound experience of swimming in that uh, feeling of total divinity. There was no fear. There was no fear because fear is the basis of hatred and fear is the basis of hating other people and you're good, I'm bad, you're bad, I'm good, all this criticism and
You're
we
wrong,
just
I'm
get stuck.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, you're wrong, I'm right, If you believe that, you're wrong. If I believe this, I'm wrong. It doesn't matter. And it's the same pool of this beautiful, sacred, divine love that we live in. And I remember hearing, one of the things that I heard is when I was having this experience with the Master Jesus was, um, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom. By rich, he meant someone whose mind is filled with notions,
Yeah.
laden with notions. Because when I experienced that divine nature, there were no notions. There was just this divine eternal love. And then, of course, I would experience it very deeply. And I would have many, many mystical experiences along the way, which I talk about in the book. And, prior to that, I had no idea of Kundalini energy. I had no idea of master teachers or, I none of that. And all of this was just so revealed to me. And it was just filled with this feeling of why didn't anybody tell me about this as I was growing up? Has this been so hidden? And it's the most important thing that ever could happen to anybody. Why is no one talking about it? And of
I think
course, I was
maybe
in the
they
health,
were, but they were being medicated.
perhaps
You
they
know
were
what I mean?
pushed away.
People
Let's not talk
I think
about that,
people have
right?
no, but it's true though. Like I do think, some people just it's kind of like and it's so funny because we're seeing so much of it now. People who have experienced, seeing a UFO or whatever, how they never wanted to talk about it until the
Yeah.
government said, "Oh yeah, by the way, there are aliens. Nobody's crazy." And
That's
now
so
all of
don't
a sudden,
lock you up. So
yeah,
don't
so
lock
now
you up
people are like,
somewhere.
"Okay, good. They know I'm not crazy now, so now I can be, honest
Yeah,
about where I'm at." And I feel like there's enough people that are having
yeah,
this experience that are stepping up and talking about
yeah.
it that I think it's giving people more of a permission to go, "Okay, I'm not crazy. This is actually happening," you know?
Well, we're sort of raised with a lot of fixed ideas,
Oh yeah.
fixed concepts, and we take them on until that a bubble is burst at some point in our lives through it's a crisis or however it happens. Usually it's
Or
through
it goes
a
against our
crisis.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like our experience in life looks different than what we were taught. And when
Mhm.
that happens and it rubs up against it, you're just like,
Then
"Okay,
what? Yeah,
now
then
what do
what?
I do?" Yeah.
Now what do I do? Now, I would say trust your heart, not
Funny
not the
because religion
discursive
tells you not
critical
to.
mind. Yeah, which is what can we say? It's sad.
I know. It is
I
sad.
mean,
It is.
when we experience love in the heart, we experience profound love, whether it's for a dog or for a person or whatever, a tree, nature, you feel it. It's in you. I mean, the senses are doorways to the infinite, so to speak.
Oh,
The
that's
senses
a
are
great
doorways
quote.
to your divine nature. Your senses are that doorway to the infinite when you experience something. Do you ever get it's sort of like the experience, when you get your favorite ice cream and the ice cream cone,
Mm.
and mine is chocolate. But then you take that first lick of the cone, the chocolate ice cream, and you experience that just delightful moment or whatever it is that you love to eat. That just touches upon that experience
Mm.
of bliss, that moment.
Of knowing.
So they are doorways,
Yeah.
not an answer in themselves. And when you just have your senses always outside, you get lost in the sea of stuff. But when you go inside, it anchors you into your experience of the light within you, the beauty within you, and
Can you
and
help
it's
me understand what that
it's
looks
beautiful.
like? How do we explain that to somebody? What does it look like to go inside? And what are we doing? Give me maybe some examples of what people are doing that is going on the outside instead of the inside.
Well, on the outside, you're always looking for love. You want someone to love you, so you're always seeking a partner that you think they're going to fulfill you. When that doesn't work, you try another person because you think it's the person. And after one after the other, I mean, I've done it in my life. Come on, we've
Mhm,
all done it in
mhm.
our lives as here. And then you sit back and you like, after your second or third divorce, you wonder, what the heck is, I'm trying to find this love out there. Where is it anyway? Until finally something happens and maybe you start realizing that maybe it's in me. Maybe what the spiritual masters have said is it's in me. And maybe I should try a little meditation. Maybe just close my eyes, focus on my breathing, just breathe in and breathe out without letting the discursive mind kind of flow and its ideas and see what happens. And whatever happens, happens. And it might necessarily not happen right away. It may take weeks, months, years, but something will change in you. And you'll start being you're more interested and more curious of what's inside me anyway. Who am I and why am I here? Because I'm certainly not just this individual name that people call me. I feel like there's so much more. There's got to be more. That's why a lot of stars in Hollywood, when they get a lot of money and they get a lot of stuff and they get a lot of relationships, end up killing themselves because they're not satisfied. They realize none of this stuff that I got from the world, none of it has given me peace. None of it has given me this feeling of inner love. None of it.
So
And
sad.
and this is true. I mean, in our own way, that's what I was doing. I was seeking it outside me, try
Mhm.
to find someone to love me. And it never worked out. It never worked out. And then usually it's through a crisis that people go through a crisis and their minds are stopped because they can't hold any more thoughts. And in that space between thoughts is divinity itself because it's everywhere. I mean, as I experienced when I opened the back door of my home, looking out at the tree and seeing this photonic packets of light everywhere, this love that just permeated everything and changed me forever.
Mm.
And the way I looked at the world, looked at nature, understood this earth as a paradise, but we've created it in a very we've experienced it and created it in an ugly way. You know, 99% of people, 1% people hold all the wealth, which I think is an illness.
Mhm.
99 don't. What's going on here? What's all this greed? Where does the greed come from? Where is that? And that comes from a separation from our true selves, thinking, you know, oh, that's the other. I don't care about them, without realizing, we're all
We're
this
all one.
love.
Yeah.
And how can we serve the world and create structures that reflect that experience in you? How can we do this? Because there's plenty of money in the world. There's plenty of everything in the world, plenty of absolutely everything. But it's just these blockages that don't allow that to be the experience and to have it shared with everybody. Because
Yeah.
everybody could
It's
have
fear.
everything. Everybody could have everything. And
Mhm.
everyone deserves to be fed, to be housed, to have a good job, and all of that. Everyone deserves that just by the mere fact that they're here on the earth
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
that this nature is in everyone, but we create separations in people. We make people hate other people, and that sort of thing. And it's very sad. I mean, it's just a
It is.
sad situation, and it's all false. We've created this from a separative idea. But once I experienced that this oneness that we all are, and that it's in everyone, even in a grumpy person, that still is there in them. They may not know it, but you know it.
Yeah.
And because you know it, you have the responsibility of not treating them badly.
Mm.
You have that responsibility. It's on you. And that's how I felt that. Like it's on me. If someone's grumpy, doesn't mean that's who they are. It's just an experience they're having
Mm.
and not to be critical. So it was it all came back on me and how I behaved in the world and had to change and let go of my own ideas and my own criticisms of others and myself. It starts with yourself, really,
Yeah.
but then you put it on others. So I had to change all of that. And of course, it changed me in how I when I came upon homeopathic medicine as a system of medicine whose remedies are from nature, that are highly diluted to the level that is, there's just they exist on an energetic level rather than a material level. And that if consciousness is the basis of all things and the basis of all healing, that we need to incorporate, because homeopathic medicine was once part of our medical system in the United States, and it was becoming very popular. It's popular throughout the rest of the world, but in the United States, it was once it became started to become very popular and used in our hospitals, taught in our medical schools. The Rockefeller family, who created a medical lab creating synthetic petrochemical drugs from because they owned Standard Oil. Once that happened, and they saw that homeopathy was really taking off because it was brought here from Europe as the best in prevention and cure of all communicable disease and in acute and chronic problems. Once they saw that, and there was the competition was going on, they had to get rid of it. And so they got rid of it. They got it removed from our hospitals, removed from our medical schools. We had over 15,000, medical doctors in the United States who were homeopaths at the end of the, and the 1890s and through 1930 in the United States. And the last class was taught at BU Medical School in homeopathy after it was removed. That last class was taught there. So the principles are all there. And so I'm doing a class. I'm doing this 3-part series in a class on homeopathic medicine, introducing it uh, to the public. Again, of course, I've done this for many years, but now I'm having this particular class that people can take. If they go on my website, maryterhune.com, they can find an access to that. And then they can download that class and watch it. Those classes, there's 3-part series anytime they want. So along with, you know, my book is on Amazon, of course, out of the blue,
Mhm.
and
Out
you
of the
can get it there. You can find the connection to my website as well.
Do you
But I've
talk about the
changed.
7 things that he downloaded into you in that moment? Do you talk about what those things were in
Oh
the
yeah,
book?
that's
Oh,
I
good.
start off the book with this, the
Yes.
7
Okay.
revelations that he
Yeah.
gave me, and as he gave me the revelations, he would give me an inner experience of it in my own life.
Mm.
So there was an integration and an understanding on that level, and how to view things differently from a different perspective in a different way, and not to get caught up in a critical views of everything, including myself. It all starts with us. But
Yeah.
once this happened, then I had many, many mystical experiences that just create had me go deeper, integrate it more with more understanding, more clarity, and then more responsibility
Mm.
in my life in the world and how I would interact with people. I used to, get very triggered, as we all do at times, right?
Mhm.
By people, and I realized, why you're doing that? What does it matter? You know, just be who you are, do your work in the world, and people have opinions. That's fine. All opinions are fine. You don't have to get into an argument because then you leave your that state of, understanding that the world is just processing different things at different
In
levels and
different ways. Yeah.
in different ways and different understandings, but the destination is the same and the underlying truth is the same. There's divine nature in everybody. And some people experience this through their religious practices. Some people just experience through their meditation practices. Some people just experience walking in nature and that their religion is love. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's spirituality or being religious, it doesn't really matter. Just treat everybody knowing that this love exists in them and they express it in different ways. And it's all fine, it's all good because the destination is the same. So, I have to, just like everybody else, I have to practice it every day, in every moment.
That's beautiful. It's so pretty. And I wish we could all grasp that. I feel like that's kind of why I'm doing the podcast is to share these different journeys so that we don't get so triggered when somebody speaks of something
Mm,
different. It is
huh,
very, very scary when somebody has a different quote truth than you have. when the way
Well,
that they're arriving is so different than the way you have. And
mhm,
so we get anxious, we get angry, we get defensive, we
mhm,
want to cling to our truth. And when somebody is saying something that doesn't line up with that, it's
mhm.
threatening. And like, how do we get rid of that?
Well, realize that the only thing that feels threatened are your ideas,
Mhm.
and ideas can change. So they're
Yeah,
not really
I'm
you. Your ideas are not really you. So
living proof right here.
what is it in you that doesn't
Yeah,
change?
yeah,
It's that love.
love.
Your divine nature doesn't change. It's always there. It's always present.
Mm.
So, and when we latch on to ideas, which have more to do with egoic identification as a separate person and a separate life, that is creates fear. That's separation from that pure experience of divinity that you are. That is has just love. There is no fear there because
There's
there
no
is
fear
no
in
other.
perfect love. Perfect love
That's
casts
right.
out fear. Yeah,
Well, fear can't live there because it's
yeah.
based on separation. Fear is based on separation. But in this divine love, it's just this oneness and it's just love. There is no fear. And I have to say that the first time I experienced no fear was when I had the full realization of my divine nature back in 1988, followed very shortly after by an experience of my own death, and that you can't die because you're living consciousness. You're living consciousness. You have a body, but the
Mhm.
body is only alive because there is this divine nature. You can call it Brahman, you can call it Christ consciousness that goes through you and enlivens and informs the body and all the cells, and it knows how to heal. The law of healing is in that, and that's what homeopathy grasps onto, that law of healing. Like cures like, and the remedies are from nature, and there's no pollution with them, there's no drugging with them. It just works with that underlying principle that knows how to heal itself. It's built into us. We have it. And we've been taught not to trust it. We've been taught not to access it. And I know this because, I worked in the medical field for many years. So I understand that way of thinking. And sometimes you need drugs, but for the most part, if you allowed homeopathic medicine back into our medical system, you wouldn't need as many because you would have more cure you because it's curative and you can get things, acute things right away before they become chronic things. But
Right.
even so, homeopathy can handle that. So become less dependent on having to take drugs and open up to this other system that has always worked and it still works in the world. Millions and millions of people use it. Doctors use it in Europe. So just to open up to that and to have a more balanced system. It's not throwing one out, it's opening up and allowing something else to come in to work with it.
But it'll
It's-
hit their bottom line though. So that's probably not
Well,
good.
that's where the whole ego comes in
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, you
and
think
greed.
about it, like if everybody's getting homeopathic remedies and healing, then the drug companies are going to suffer.
You need less. Well, if they would just
Mhm,
open up and they become a part of it,
mhm.
but you're going to suffer in your greed anyway. You're
Yeah.
going to drown in greed. What is that
Mhm,
going to get you? You're drowning in greed.
mhm.
So that doesn't get you anywhere. But it's that's why I teach the public because the public needs to know that they can have access to something else. But we need trauma medicine. We need have needed surgeries.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to have drugs. Sometimes people just can't, for whatever reason, use homeopathy,
Mhm,
um, or it doesn't work for them for some reason. Uh, Nothing is 100%, but at least let's balance things out so
mhm.
we're not so heavy into this,
Yeah.
which is not
And
curative, but it
dependent,
keeps you alive, and have
very
something
dependent.
that's curative that can help balance out the system.
Right.
You know, you,
That
you
makes
need both.
sense.
I
It's like
understand both.
nutrition, it's like nutrition. When we eat right, our bodies
That's right.
respond. Yeah.
Exactly. So it takes a holistic way. What are you eating? What kind of
Mhm.
relationships do you have? What kind of work do you do? Do you hate it? Do you hate the relationship you're in? This all impacts you. And certainly grief is one of the big issues. And the grief is a great foundation for a lot of acute and chronic disease that holds you in that. I mean, grief is a powerful, powerful experience. It can break your heart, give you a heart attack. It can break down your neurological system. You know, it's a big force that isn't well expressed in our culture.
Well, it's
And
expressed, but it's expressed in anger. I look at anger as like ungrieved grief. That's what it seems like to me.
yes, we don't know how to process grief.
Right.
We don't recognize it for what it is.
Mhm.
It's an expression of love that that isn't allowed to have the expression, and that's why it turns to anger,
Right.
but or sadness, and then depression. So
Mhm.
that's a big one in this culture, is
Mhm.
to understand how and help people to find ways to grieve. You know, like
Mhm.
trauma medicine. You know, dealing with these experiences as traumas. That illness is basically stuck consciousness. It's stuck traumas, and that it lays a foundation. I mean, there are other reasons for it too. Drugs that we're
Mhm.
taking, injections we get, can create a lot of disease in our body and imbalance. So
Mhm.
it's many ways it happens. So but certainly grief is one of the big ones, and certainly I've experienced that in my life, and I tell the story of that in the book as well, and how I was cured of Hashimoto's thyroiditis with homeopathy when I discovered the basis of it was unexpressed grief when my mother was pregnant
Mhm.
with me in utero at 8 months. It
Wow.
was a very interesting beginning. So in homeopathy, I studied with a medical doctor for a number of years, homeopathic medicine, and I discovered that grief, much of our chronic issues ha- have a have a root cause in childhood and even in utero, and it's unresolved things that happen that that continue to happen over time and that never get resolved. A lot of mental emotional issues, or even never well since issues. But once that's what homeopathy addresses, these never well since issues, mental emotional, experienced as a physical issues. So we see, homeopath looks at symptoms not as diseases, but as a roadmap to the needed remedy and the root cause of how it is your health is being impacted today.
Because of
So,
unexpressed emotions or, unhealthy ways of coping with things. Yeah. Wow.
or it can be many different ways.
Yeah.
The never
Yeah.
well since events can be anything, you know?
So interesting. Well, I have absolutely loved hearing your story and your journey, and
Mm,
I cannot wait to read your book. I know you sent me a copy, haven't had a chance. I kind of skimmed through it, but I was like, oh, I need to really read this. It's called Out of the Blue, guys. It's true life experiences of awakening, revelation, transformation, and consciousness based medicine. And it's Mary
mhm.
Terhune, and she is online. You can find her at maryterhune.com, right? And
Yes.
she has courses you can take. She has all kinds of resources you can find. Um, I love that you're doing this, that you're like really helping people understand um, just the importance of love. I mean, it really, if you boil it down,
Mm.
Mary,
Yes.
that's your goal. I can tell.
Yes, and also on my website, I created conversations with Mary in case
Mhm.
people want to have sessions with me, private sessions for 30 or 60 minutes with me, whatever they want to talk about.
Love it. Sometimes talk therapy, just being able to talk through something with somebody that you respect and who has a new and fresh perspective can be really healing. So, thank you for
Find it
what you're
true
doing.
in my own life, I find that to be true. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And mine too. So, yeah. I
mm,
mean, I feel like every time I do one of these interviews with somebody and I hear their journey, it heals me a little bit more, because I'm
right.
realizing that we're all kind of going through the same thing in different ways. And
That's right.
it's so encouraging to go, I am so not alone. I am not
So not
crazy.
alone.
Yeah.
No, so not alone. We
So,
all go through the same thing in life. It's
yeah.
just different stories.
Well, and when we're not afraid to hear those stories, it
Yeah.
can change our lives for the
Yes.
better, when we stop being afraid of everything. Um, I
I
get it
love
though.
hearing
I
people's
mean,
stories. I
I do
love hearing
too.
people's stories.
Yeah, it's beautiful and it's healing. It's healing me
It's healing.
one
It's
story at
very
a time.
healing. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Mary. You've been a delight and I honor your journey. And Yeah, I look forward to seeing more from you. I think you're really making an impact. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you, Leslie, for the work you do as well, and it's been a pleasure speaking with you.